Hello, Peekers. Welcome back. I'm Miranda.
And I'm Mackenzie, and this is your one-stop shop for storytelling.
Tea spilling.
And to keep up on all the latest book talk drama that you have been missing out on.
Any life updates?
No. Well, it's 4th of July. So for our watchers, got a little 4th of July makeup on. Looks very light in the lighting here. However, on my face, it looks beat. So
You are bold, girl. Glam, full glam.
So we're going to do a little pool day, maybe some fireworks tonight. We'll see. How about you? Any life updates for you?
Well, it is gloomy here. We were going to go to the pool and drink some margaritas. We still might, but it's not looking that great. So we're going to go watch Inside Out 2 this afternoon. And we're so excited. I've heard nothing but good reviews about it. So I'm excited to cry a little bit today, you know?
I hope you do cry. Please let me know.
I'm really not good at crying in movies. You are. I wish I could be a crier in movies, but it's hard.
I wish that I could give you some of my crying in movies, really.
Yeah. I wish I could cry on command.
Well, sometimes it'll just be like a really moving part. Like, you know, it'll be getting to the climax of the movie and the music, the dramatic music will start playing and it'll just gets me.
You know what it is? You know what it is? I was thinking about this, about you specifically the other day. I was like, Mackenzie is so empathic and so good at like talking to people because you're so present in every moment that you're in. I feel like you're always just like right there in the moment and you're not worried about like other things outside. You're just living right here in the moment. You're taking everything in. And I really appreciate that about you.
That is so sweet. That is such a nice compliment. Thank you so much. I love you. That's ugly. Love you so much.
If that's the millennial way to do it. You have to do it this way.
Aren't we millennials?
No.
I'm pretty sure that we
ever
are.
Say that again. No,
disgusting.
No.
I think that we are, if we are Gen Z, we're like geriatric Gen Z.
No. Okay, yeah. We're like on the very cusp. Because I think we're somewhere in between.
I think we're Zillennials. Zillennials.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's what it is.
Like we don't relate to the older millennials, but we're a little too old for the Gen Zers. Geriatric Zers, Zillennials, if you will.
Zillennials. I think that's a really good way to say it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, if that's all we've got to say, then I guess we can go ahead and get into it. Am I right?
Am I right or am I right?
Let's get into it. All right, well, before we begin, let's do our quick recap and remind you guys that this episode will be covering Sarah J. Maas's Heir of Fire, chapters 11 through 19, and we will be storytelling and talking about everything that has happened up to this point. So if you have not read this book and you do not want spoilers, you have been warned. So now that that's all out of the way, let's do a quick recap of what's happened so far. We met some new characters, Manon or Manon, I say Manon, who is a terrifying Iron Tooth witch being summoned with the other Iron Teeth witches to consider joining the king's army as his aviation unit with his wyverns that he's been creating. And then we met Aeidon, who is Celaena's cousin, and he's currently one of the king's most notorious generals. We spotted a black ring on this guy's finger, so we're keeping an eye on that. And then Chaol has decided to start stalking Aeidon just to try to get some leverage on him while he's in town so he doesn't cause a ruckus amongst his men. And then Dorian and Chaol, they're definitely not seeing eye to eye, and it seems like Dorian might be catching some new feelings for the palace healer Sorcha. And where we left off with Celaena, she was found by another distant cousin, Rowan, and brought to meet her long-lost aunt, Queen Maeve. Rowan is kind of a dick, but he is instructed to train Celaena on how to master her powers before she can move back to Maeve's realm and talk about the word keys. Maeve might be an evil character, but I can't quite tell yet, but she's a bitch.
Retweet on the bitch. Also, I'm pretty sure are you saying Sorcha?
Yeah,
I
am.
Sorcha.
Sorcha. I like Sorcha better than Sorcha.
I was like,
maybe I will start to pronounce her name correctly. Sorsha.
Sorsha.
I might. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to change the way I
It
spell
looks
that.
like Sorcha. You are such a phonetic.
A literal reader.
Honestly,
Yeah,
that is
I
English
am.
for you, though, because English, the words are not always as they seem. So I don't hate you for it. But
Thank you.
yeah.
That's literally how I was taught to read. They're like, sound it out. So I'm sounding this shit out. And you guys are always like, that's not right. And I'm like, well.
You said, I learned that in first grade and I stopped paying attention after everything after that. So that's what it's going to be.
I was like, I got by. I got this far. So where we pick up, Celaena has been dropped off in her room. Just imagine it essentially being like a level below a prison cell. It's definitely not the cozy abode she's used to in the glass castle. And it's giving gloomy vibes, okay? She's also assigned to be in kitchen duties to help around in the morning, around the fort, and then train in the afternoons with Rowan. And in the kitchen, she meets Emery and Luca, who are both demi-fays. And Luca is like this teenager who's starting to enter manhood, but is still very much a hyper innocent little kid. And Emery is this older, precious guy who's also a little sweet, if you know what I mean.
Oh, do we have a little LGBTQ representation around here?
Yes, we do.
He's got a fae mate. That's a man. And they're in love. And they're so cute.
Do you think that makes him like automatically gay? Or do you think that it's like just still kind of ambiguous of it's just who his fate ended up being and he's cool with it?
I don't know. I feel like when Sarah J. Maas describes it, it's like your mate is supposed to be your equal in every way. It's supposed to be your like other half complementary. But I don't feel like she really goes into like, it has to be your sexual preference or whatever. But I feel like the idea and the goal is that you love your mate unconditionally. Like you love your mate, like they complete you in every way. So I feel like,
fair enough.
I feel like you would have to have at least some inclination toward men for it to be, or, you know, like toward the same gender, if your mate was same gender, to be, to feel that way. Like it wouldn't be like this random, like, oh God, he's ugly. Like I don't like him. Although when we get into ACOTAR, talks of mates and like attraction and stuff like that, we'll get more into that too. If we do ACOTAR, when we do ACOTAR.
ACOTAR will be way down the road. That's going to be a different way to tell a story too, because I've already read that one. But I think it'll still be really fun to read because it was a great story. So if you guys haven't read that one, read ACOTAR for sure.
What we do when we read ACOTAR, we could have some guest stars on and have them reacting to first-time listens.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. We can get their opinions, their reactions, answer any questions they have. All right. Well, so Celaena is trying, while she's doing her little kitchen duties with Luca and Emery, she's trying to get some tea on Rowan because Rowan's like got this big ego about him. And she's like, what's the tea? Should I actually be afraid of him? And they're both like, no, yeah, actually, you should really be afraid of him. He's terrifying. So she's got that in the back of her mind when they begin their first training session, which is trying to get her to shift to her fae form on command. And Rowan is not holding back. His tactic is to just be as mean and nasty to her as she was to him when he decked her in the face. But she's like, look, listen, I've never been able to control my power, so why don't I pay you a lot of money so you can just bring me over to Maeve and we can both go our separate ways.
Honestly, that's so relatable. I love that for her. She said, listen, I've got things you want. You don't like me. Let's do a little something to make this go away.
No, and he did not respond well to this. He was like, you know what? Actually, first, I want to give a little context to what he was doing to her, like how he's trying to trigger her into switching. He's essentially just telling Celaena that she is like a waste of space. She's a coward, good for nothing loser. But I am still just trying to like register why he's so angry and mean to her. And I'm thinking is it something to do with the fact that he's finding out that Aeidon is alive right now and she's been here this whole time, not helping Terrasen, not helping stopping the king and his conquering, or is he just an asshole? Because in her defense, she was literally a child whenever all this went down.
Yeah, I think we'll get more into why he is the way that he is, a psychopath. But I do think that part of him is like, you've been out there being a little uppity princess, like living your life in Aderlin in the royal court when your family was like murdered by everybody. Like you've given up everything that like you should be standing for. And I just think he He just does not like her.
He's grumpy.
He's so grumpy.
Yeah, for no reason. That's what I'm like. I'm like, literally, what is your deal, my guy? He's just being so mean for no reason.
When I was reading this, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with him? Why is he so aggressive? For what reason?
And he's very toxic, it sounds like. They're both very toxic for each other, honestly. That's what it seems. They like feed off of how angry they both are.
Yeah, they really hype each other up to like much higher levels of anger.
Yeah. So after she tries to bribe Rowan into like letting her do a little switcheroo and go talk to Maeve, he's like, no, obviously I'm not going to agree to be being paid off, but we'll do something else instead. If you can walk through these white mounds over here, I'll take you over to Maeve. And whites are essentially like these spooky creatures that can come out and get you. And that's all you really need to know right now at this point. So Celaena's like, fuck it, let's do it. And they go to this field full of white mounds. She starts walking through and notices the whites are waking, but they're also hesitating and turning back as if they see something that scares them. Celaena starts to get a bad vibe. She feels there's someone else other than her walking through these mounds. She turns to look behind a mound and she sees a man standing. Creepy, but gorgeous, with night dark hair and a black collar around his neck. He sounds kind of kinky if you ask me. But anyways, she keeps going and she looks around and then everything goes black. She's brought to the inside of her mind and she begins to relive the night that her parents died. How she snuck into the room during that thunderstorm, thinking that the bed was wet from the rain that was coming through their open window. And then the memory switches. And now she sees Nehemiah carved up, mutilated, violated, and broken in her own bed. And Celaena is quite literally having a PTSD panic attack. She starts throwing up, and I hate to put her on blast like this, but she did piss her pants.
I mean, if I was going through that, I do think I would piss my pants too. But so also, like, we'll get into it. Like, that is horrifying. She felt like she couldn't get out, and she felt like she was like being pulled into this black hole of like her worst memories being put on replay. And then she also is trying really hard to get through. And she's thinking, this is what's supposed to happen. Like, this is what he's telling me. Because she doesn't really know what to expect running through these fields of the white mounds. And she's like, I don't know what to do. I've got to run as fast as I can. So that would be really scary to me.
Yeah, I think I would also pee my pants. But then that creepy man, he comes up behind her, the one who was watching her. He comes up behind her and starts like caressing her stomach and pulling her into him. But our girl luckily knows how to evade a creep, so she breaks out of his grip and this vision that she's in. She sprints out of the mountain. At some point during her run, she shifts into her fae form and lets out this huge burst of fire as she screams before passing out. She wakes up to Rowan sitting across from her in the forest, and he's being an asshole, and he's just like, you know, you failed, and you might have ran through those mounds, but that wasn't the white that you faced. It was actually some other kind of skinwalker that he's never seen. So, Kinsey, can you explain to them what a normal skinwalker is?
They're really, really scary. And we do get to see more about skinwalkers later on in this book. So we'll get to like describe them a little bit more. But basically the skinwalkers are these creatures that live in the mountains of Wendelin. I don't even remember exactly how to describe them. So whenever it gives us a physical description, we will. But basically they try to find victims, human victims or fae victims, to kill them and, trigger warning, carve them up, cut off their skin, and make pelts out of them to wear.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about them too is like they're immortal in a sense. Like they can't necessarily die by normal human means. They're like zombies almost. Like you can cut them up and everything, and then they can still put themselves back together and be perfectly fine. Is that kind of Does that sound right? Yeah, so they're spooky little creatures right there. So yeah, the next day comes around and Celaena is looking all kinds of beat up from sparring with Rowan, and when she shifted yesterday and was going in and out of her fae form without control, it seemed to be super painful for her. And it doesn't help that the training with Rowan sounds like actual torture. Like he's making her sit out there in the freezing cold thunderstorms, trying to make her shift into her fae form. But after a long day of failing, after she leaves the woman's bathroom, she comes out to find a clean pair of folded clothing, same as the day before, which she finds kind of sus because she either has an invisible servant following her around or Rowan is trying to be nice to her from a distance. So later on that night, Celaena sneaks out of her little prison cell room for a late night snack, and she finds Emery leading a group of people through a story time. And apparently he's like a legit storyteller and someone that genuinely knows the legends and tales of their cultures. So that makes me feel like he's going to become an important part of this story somehow. So I'm just going to keep my eyes on Emery. And then to finish up our main character's plot this week, Celaena actually catches Rowan in his animal form, or I guess she confirms it's his animal form. He's a large white-tailed hawk, and she knows it's him because she remembers taking note of this bird following her around when she was wine drunk her first few days in Wendolyn.
That is so funny. Actually, I cannot wait. We'll share some on our TikTok too, but there are so many freaking memes about Rowan in his hawk form. They are
really
so funny.
You're gonna have to share those.
I will. I've been waiting till you get through this part and like through. I think you have to get through a little bit of Queen of Shadows, but the freaking Rowan memes are so funny. I just imagine him like he's this big scary fae warrior, and then his form is like an owl, and he's like just.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, he's a hawk. That's it. I mean, hawks are big, but I would like maybe it's like a fae hawk. Is that the kind of is it like a huge, ginormous? Hawk? No, he's a regular hawk.
He's a regular sized hawk.
Okay, well, I don't know how he's really winning fights with that, but it's cool. I don't know.
I'd be like,
really sharp talons.
Perch on my shoulder here. Let's talk.
Like, come on,
little boy. Guy. Let's go.
Jumping back to Rifthold to check on the boys, despite Chaol's best attempts at stalking Aeidon, he has not been successful at actually catching him do anything. Supposedly, he's been throwing these wild raiders at the local pub, but Chaol has yet to see him there himself. So that's suspicious. So Chaol decides to hide out before Aeidon's next party starts and watches Aeidon arrive, but then he watches him dip out early under the ruse of being too drunk to function, only for him to suspiciously flip his hood and walk to an abandoned warehouse, which is also suspiciously the same location Celaena told Chaol the rebels are hiding at. So he goes in after him, but because it's Chaol, he gets caught immediately. And turns out it's the same crew who kidnapped him the very first time, only this time Aedion's with them. And they're doing their usual, beating, threatening to kill, all that good stuff. And the rebels give Chaol one final chance to say why they shouldn't kill him right now. So he feels it's his only saving grace to tell them that Aelin is alive and he knows her. I feel like that was a great Hail Mary for the rebels.
I do feel like that's a great Hail Mary for the rebels. However, that's such a betrayal of Celaena / Aelin. You know what I mean?
You think so?
I personally do, because yes, he knows that they're rebels working toward overthrowing the kingdom, but also like she's literally out on another continent fighting for her life, knowing that she can potentially never come back to Adarlan because she's not going to try to kill Gavin, Gavin Ashriver, So like, I don't know. It really stressed me out when I read this because we don't know what's going to happen. We also don't know their motives. Like, are they going to try to manipulate her in fighting? We don't know. I just got so much anxiety when I read that. I think I just hate Chaol so much.
No, yeah, I think that could be that. Because for me, I was like, that honestly seemed like something he should have said in the first half while he was getting beat up. I would have been like, hey, I know the person that you guys are looking for is alive and I know where she's at if you guys want to go help. Like, I feel like this could have been really, he didn't have to get beat up this far. But I do see what you're saying, that it's like kind of throwing her under because she's like not here to speak up and say anything.
Well, and also we know that Aeidon has a black ring on. Obviously, like it seems that he's working for the rebels, but like we don't know what his loyalties are, how influenced he is by the king, what that black ring signifies, anything like that at this point. So when I read this, I was like, holy fuck, you don't know. Like he could literally be like under some kind of influence that he has to go back and tell the king,
Yeah. Yeah, well, and then we do address that because Chaol, he decides he's only going to talk to Aeidon about this any further, and he tells him basically everything he knows about Celaena, aka Aelin, and then he also confronts Aedon's black ring from the king, and that's when Aeidon tells him that thanks to his Fae heritage, he could sense that something was off about it when he got it, and he threw the original ring into the sea and got a replica in place of it. Thank goodness for that. And then Aeidon comes clean to Chaol and openly says that he believes that Aelin is his true queen and his loyalties will always be with her. And apparently he and Aelin were very close growing up and that he was supposed to be her personal sword before the massacre had happened. And he also confesses that while he's been the king's general in the north, he's basically been doing the same thing that Celaena's been doing on her missions for the king. So when he would kill these rebels in Terrazin, he would fake most of their deaths and tell them to run. So I'm just really happy to say that he is definitely team Celaena/Aelin.
I agree. I think that it was a good choice in telling him. However,
In hindsight,
he really just didn't know how that could go. You know what I mean? I feel like he chose to save his skin instead of knowing for a fact that Aelin would be safe.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think that in hindsight, everything worked out, but what you were concerned about in the first half, I would have been afraid of that too. So Chaol lets him know that Dorian knows nothing about any of this, and we finally have someone asking why the fuck not, because Dorian could be a huge piece to helping overthrow the king.
He could.
And I know, Mackenzie, you've got some valid points, but
no, he totally could.
What I've been thinking.
But I do think at this point, Dorian doesn't know where his loyalties lie. I mean, he knows they lie with his friends, and he knows that he has a lot of issues with the king, but he hasn't really taken a stand in any way, shape, or form, you know? So I think it's fair for people to be a little bit on the fence, especially seeing where his father's obvious zero loyalties lie. You know what I mean? It's all for himself. So I think it's fair to be a touch concerned. And also, I'm sure they're trying to protect Dorian too. To an extent.
I know the motives are there, but
I do feel bad for him.
I do too. Yeah, I feel
he's
real
definitely
bad for him,
very alone right now.
But tea about Maeve came out of this conversation between Chaol and Aeidon. Apparently, when Aeidon hears that Celaena's with Maeve, he's surprised and describes Maeve as a spider waiting in a web to see what became of Aelin when she was younger. And Maeve's power is the power of sight. So she can track and see anything that she has a connection to, I believe. So I'm going to call it, and I'm going to go ahead and say that she is a bad guy.
I don't know.
That's just me. I'm just going to say it. I think she's the bad guy.
We can never know. It could be.
And I'm sticking to it.
Could be Dorian, for all we know.
Don't ever. No. No.
You said, don't you dare.
Dorian.
Shut your mouth.
Don't you ever. Anyways. So moving on to Dorian, my guy has a lot of pent up energy since acknowledging this new power he has. And as a result, he's been sparring with the sentries and subsequently getting boo-boos and needing to see Miss Sorsha. Sorsha?
Yeah, you got it.
And in my opinion, thank you. In my opinion, because Dorian and her are definitely into each other, I feel like Dorian is projecting Celaena onto her. Like he sees Celaena in her because like Celaena, Sorsha is here serving the very man, the king, who killed her whole village and family. And because she had nowhere else to go, she's here. And I think that Dorian just likes to be Mr. Salvation in a nice way.
I do think he likes that. However, I think that he's so alone right now. He doesn't have Celaena. He doesn't have Chaol. Like, he really hates his father at this point. He really has no one to talk to. Nehemiah's dead. He can't talk to anyone about his magic because Chaol freaks out like a psychopath whenever he talks about it.
Mother hen.
So, I mean, the fact that he has someone now to like confide in, someone that also knows some of his dirty secrets, probably feels like an extra comfort to him too, in my opinion. But I also agree with what you said too. As much as I love Dorian, I do think he's a little bit of a player. He loves the attention from the women. He loves feeling like a good guy. Which isn't the worst thing, because I don't feel like he's like a bad guy. He just he genuinely cares when he's in the moment, you know. Anyways, so they're talking one day during one of his boo-boo appointments, and they end up bringing up the monsters that Celaena... What? It's a boo-boo appointment. He keeps getting boo-boos.
And they're talking about the monsters that Celaena had taken down a couple months ago. And Sorsha asks if his dad would punish her if he found out about them, to which Dorian confessed yes. And then she asked a few more pressing questions where he essentially admits and fully sees that his dad is the bad guy. And Dorian loses it. His magic erupts and a blast of wind, ice, and something else surge through the room. And this is the moment that really seemed like a tipping point in character development if I've ever seen one, which I haven't. I feel like this is my very first like character development, like tipping point. This is so pivotal for him, I feel like.
Right. And this all is happening in front of Sorsha too. So, I mean,
yeah.
I feel like he's losing a little bit of control. He doesn't know how to control his magic. Nehemiah was the only person that even said she could help him. You know what I mean? And he's so scared of being found out. He realizes his dad is a monster, and for even showing the slightest bit of magic, he could be executed on the spot, prince or no.
Ugh. Yeah, and that's terrifying.
Poor guy.
God, that's so scary. Poor guy. Dorian's explosion ends up wrecking this room, knocking over all the potions that she's been working on. So when Dorian comes back to, he's in a panic and he runs to check that she's okay. Luckily she is, but again, the room is wrecked and she's just like, don't worry, everything is fine. I'm okay. You're okay. We can definitely figure this out. We can fix it up. And I just imagine her in this scene, how every healthcare worker behaves whenever they're secretly panicking about a patient and they just have to keep that brave face. Like, no. Everything's fine. Everything's
Take a deep
good.
breath. It's okay. It's okay. A lot of our listeners are healthcare workers, and we all know that when shit goes down, you just have this attitude, this face that it's like, it's okay. We got this. Don't freak out. Even they could be like on the floor, like ready to start coding. And we're like, it's okay. I'm going to need you to step aside. We're going to take this over. It's going to be okay. I would love to see this as a live action play out because I know she would have nurse face immediately.
No, exactly. Do you have a story, like anything that you can remember a situation like this happening to you? The first thing that comes up to me, it was literally my first job as a baby nurse. Me and this other girl, we had just gotten off orientation. And some guy had like this surgery of some sort. I don't even remember what it was, but he started bleeding a lot. And it wasn't just like a little trickle. It was like pouring out of him, and it was like filling up the bed. And we were just like, oh God, what is happening? We don't know what to do. And we were freaking out because we're baby nurses. And we went to go ask another nurse, and he comes in to look. He's like, oh no, that's like a female's menstrual cycle. And then like he was like really downplaying it. He was like, that's not that much. And then we left the room. He's like, we need to go call the doctor right now. We need to get some blood transfusions stat. That's a lot of blood. And I was like,
You're like,
okay.
I've never had a menstrual cycle like that.
I was like, we were just like, maybe we're idiots. He was like, yeah, like the total week's worth of a menstrual cycle. And I was like, okay.
You're like, no, I'm pretty sure you lose like a teaspoon a day, but that's okay. That's okay.
We didn't know. He was giving us the nurse face. He was like, no, that's fine. He gaslights us.
Oh,
like,
that's
no, that's
so
totally normal.
funny. I had an experience similar to that with blood. Sorry, trigger warning for everyone. I hope you're okay with blood.
Oh yeah, sorry guys.
Oopsies, trigger. But no, I want to say I was relatively new too, like within the first year or two. And we were on night shift, and I had this patient. So I worked in oncology and bone marrow transplant. So our patients were like, their immune systems were at zero, like nothing. Like if a germ floats in the air toward them, they could get septic and die. Right. So like everything has to be super sterile, super clean. And this patient had a central line, basically a large catheter that goes into their chest. And he's hooked up to some fluids, and he calls out and said he needs to go to the bathroom. And I was like, okay, like I'm in a room. I'll be there in 2 seconds, blah, 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 whatever. I go into that room and I come in, he's already in the bathroom. And normally we just pull the IV pole along with them, take him into the bathroom. He and his family member had decided to just unhook the clave, the little part of the line that just prevents blood from pouring out. And they just decided to unhook themselves. And so I go in, and he's standing at the door of the bathroom, like stoic. And he's like, I'm bleeding and pouring blood down on the ground everywhere. Also, huge infection risk. And I grabbed some clamps and I immediately clamped that line. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to need you to come sit down in the bed real quick. Watch your feet. There's blood everywhere. You sit down, and I'm going to call for some help. And immediately pushed like the staff assist button. Blood everywhere. He was like, I am feeling a little bit lightheaded. And I was like, yeah, you have lost a lot of blood. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to need you to lie back. Okay, sit down and let's lie back. It's okay. You're probably going to get some blood tonight, okay?
Yeah, it'll be fine. If you go to sleep, you go to sleep. That's fine.
Just don't. Okay? Don't.
Please. No, and you're like, yeah, everything's fine.
But everybody calm down,
everybody
sit
else
down,
comes in,
let's
like,
relax. And everybody comes in, they're like, hey, buddy, what's going on? And we're like, so we lost a whole lot of blood. Right now, we're getting some fluids going.
That's so funny.
Love healthcare workers for that. Love that.
Yeah, but like us, Sorsha is super chill. So she tells him how they can cover everything up and clean up this mess. And then she promises that she'll keep his secret safe. And also she's volunteering to be his personal plug and will try to find a way to dampen his magic so he doesn't risk losing control in front of the king. I do have some mixed feelings for Sorsha. One, because on one hand, I can see this being a really cute relationship. But on the other hand, while reading this, she is definitely hiding something. And I feel like she in her head is like, if I play my cards right, I feel like I could have Dorian wrapped around my fingers to do whatever I want. So I want to like this relationship, but I am very sus of whatever it is that she's hiding.
I feel like there's always like could be an ulterior motive, especially with someone that the king has really wronged. You know, the king has done a lot of terrible things and Dorian is the son.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like you're wrong in thinking that at all. And she's definitely keeping her cards close to her chest.
It's giving another Nehemiah. Something's going on behind that.
Something's going on.
I don't know what it is. I want to say she's a good girl, but she's being sus, so I'm keeping my eyes out. Jumping to Farron's Gap with the Iron Teeth Witches, what I've gathered at this point is that the Blackbeak Witches know they're the scariest of all the witches in the witch clans, and they are not afraid to own it. They all seem very terrifying, but Manon seems to be, relatively speaking, more grounded than the others in a way I can't quite explain yet. Manon lives by the Blackbeak standards of obedience, discipline, and brutality to a T. And then we meet her loyal second, Astrid, and we also, which is her cousin. And then we also meet Iskra, which is the heir to the Yellow Legs clan. R.I.P. Baba Yellow Legs. And then let's go ahead and say it. We do not like Iskra. She is basically the Ironclaw version of Lady Caltaine, which is like a pick-me witch, in my opinion.
No, I think that's an excellent way to describe her. She gives off bad vibes immediately. Like, you're cool and everything, but we're gonna destroy you. And also, you're ugly. Basically is what she's giving.
she is so childish, like for no reason. Like she acts like she's 16.
Yeah.
For real. And because like witches also like fae, they seem to have like this primitive instinct to be a little more aggressive. So they're usually separated unless they need to be together. And one of their instincts is the need to assert dominance, which is all Iskra can try to do to Manon. And like we were just saying, Iskra acts like a 16-year-old, cuts in front of Manon in front of the lunch line and talks loud enough for everyone to hear her challenge Manon and apparently say something along the lines of, wouldn't it be so embarrassing if your 13 didn't get to be wing leaders? Because the tea is, before they lost their flying abilities, the 13 used to be the best flyers in all the witch clans. And so I feel like she's saying like all these other annoying things, trying to get under at Manon's skin. And she's doing better than I would, Manon. Manon is doing better than I would. She really is not giving her any attention to this test that Iskra keeps trying to give her. And in Manon's POV, she's like, I could literally eat her in my sleep and I've got a standard to uphold, so I'm not going to even pay this any attention.
We love a bad bitch who's confident and knows who she is. I think you were totally right in saying that she's exactly how people imagine and picture Celaena Sardathian. But like, she really embodies that in every way, shape, and form. Like that's our girl, Manon. I
love her. I really do love her. I really do. Already.
Bad bitch.
So let's talk about these new rides that the Iron Teeth Witches are getting. Meet the Wyverns. They are these scary, huge beasts with gray, leathery skin, massive black back legs with big-ass talons, wings with claws at the tips, yellow curved fangs, and a tail that's armed with a venomous barb. The den that they're all held in is dark, stinky, and loud and scary, and a little overstimulating from the sounds of it. The witches are shown each of these wyverns that are already cleared for battle, and it's during this showing that the witches kind of pick out which one they want to pick whenever they pass their test. And of course, Iskra and Manon have their eyes set on the same one, Titus, the biggest, baddest, and strongest of all the wyverns. But before the witches can even get airborne, they have to complete a test themselves to prove that they're war ready. And their test is scary. When they get tested, they do it on other wyverns that are also being tested for the first time. And the test consists of them running off the cliff of Farron's Gap and trusting that the wyvern knows what to do, aka nosedive all the way down this big-ass cliff and then launch their wings to start their flight. And if they don't, then they both would splat on the ground, which it seems like a waste not to just test the wyverns on their own, in my opinion, because if they fail, then you're losing another soldier.
That's true. There's just no way you could convince me to do this personally.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't feel that is
terrifying.
Courageous. I mean, sure, it is courageous. I don't feel that it's smart. I don't feel like it's a good use of resources, like you said, a good use of training schedules. But yeah, go Iron Teeth, baby.
But the witches are like, this seems like fun. Like, this seems like it could be a great time. All right, let's jump off a cliff.
The witches are like your typical adrenaline seekers of like our generation. They're like, everybody else wants to jump off this bridge. I'll do it first. Let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And then fun fact about these witches, whenever they fly, they have this muscle that comes out from behind their eyes. It's like a transparent eyelid that folds over their eyes so they can go through these really fast flying speeds without like their eyes watering up and getting blurry. So I just thought that was a really cool little fun fact for about witches. And then Manon, so the test comes, Manon and her 13, they get on these wyverns, they get on the edge of the cliff. Manon's like, let's go, bitches. They all jump as one. She's leading them, and then they take flight. It's the first time they fly in 10 years, and it's a super magical moment for the 13. And then later on that night, Manon's grandma comes to her and tells her that she wants Manon to lead the clans and be the wing leader with the 13. She wants this so it will set the Blackbeaks up for the inevitable downfall after the war when the witches all turn on each other and try to become the Iron Teeth leaders. And like I said earlier, there's going to be a war game that decides which witch will be the wing leader and an army commander. And Manon's grandma has made it very clear that she wants Manon to win no matter what, essentially. So she's like, you better do this. Don't make us embarrassed. You better win. And her grandma is also warning Manon to stay in line, keep her head on straight, because no matter how gifted Manon might be at killing, she has nothing on Baba Yellowlegs, who was 700 years old when someone slipped into her wagon and killed her. So they know about Baba being gone, but they don't know who killed her yet.
Yeah, I mean, Baba was like a matron of the witches. She was like one of their leaders. And for her to have lived 700 years and be offed by someone and nobody know what happened, tea. Straight
that is tea. And then a few side notes before we finish up this story time. Manon has been noticing some wrong smells a lot, which makes me think that she's going to have something special about her. Like she's noticing this dark magic and can tell when something's just like not natural or not of this world.
So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I do think that some of the other witches are noticing it as well, like some of her other 13, that like some of the people smell wrong and some of the animals smell wrong that are in Farron's Gap. And they're the people that are there training the wyverns basically under the king's rule and things like that. So the question I think that we should be asking is what is going on with the people and even some of the animals, some of the things that are going on in Farron's Gap. Yeah. And why do they smell like that?
Why do they stink?
Why are you disgusting? I mean, and we also, I don't know that we've talked about it, but the witches, they appear as if they're in their early 20s, you know, things like that, but they are much older. They age a lot slower. So for them to be smelling something weird with these people, it's very noticeably like something's wrong.
Yeah. And then here's my prediction right now. I know that Rowan and Manon are big characters to the series just because of TikTok, but I don't know why. But at this point, it sounds like they could be a very scary and very powerful power couple if they ever met up.
Yeah, I think they could be. They're both terrifying.
And I feel like they're both beautiful. They're both strong. They're both warriors. I feel like her noticing these weird smells makes me feel like somehow she's going to be a good guy just because she's noticing something wrong associated with the king. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm like, I feel like somehow she's going to end up tying over to their world. And Rowan and her are going to be like, oh, you're an asshole and you're an asshole and you can fight and I can fight. Let's fall in love.
Potentially. I'm unsure. I can't give you any
But that's just my
insight.
prediction. Yeah. Yeah. That's just my prediction. That's just my opinion.
That's my opinion.
Sorry, listeners. Anyway, so yeah, don't forget, guys, we do have our emails open for the bookish battle submissions. If you know a crazy story that has happened to you or someone you know, write us a little short story. Once we have about 10 submissions, we will start reading them in our micro peek section.
Yeah, this is getting embarrassing, guys. Will you just send in some freaking stories, actually?
Come on,
no pressure.
Now. Please.
Doesn't have to even be long. Just give us make something up, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, honestly, just write in a fake short story.
But tell us it's real. We'll read it. We will. We will be your number one biggest fans. Yeah.
No, seriously. We will keep doing this until we get what we want. So
we'll be like a year and a half in. We'll be like, so we're at 2 submissions now, guys. We're ready. We're almost there. Just keep writing in.
That's why I said 10 submissions instead of 100, because I was like, let's just be real
here. Yeah.
I feel
100's a little adventurous for us, I think.
No, that's why, I was like, let me try. Maybe I should have dropped it down to 5. But even still.
Well, they don't have to know. So how many we have.
Yeah, they don't have to. We could just make up our own stories.
We're like, so this is from Sarah in Wisconsin.
Like our best friend. We actually know her. She's a real person.
Yeah.
Okay, Peekers, that is the end of this week's plot. Next week, come back as we take a peek at Sarah J. Maas's Heir of Fire, chapters 20 through 30.
And be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at plot.peak. And if you want to submit those bookish battle story that we are begging for, it's plotpeakgirlies@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye. Wait, not the millennial heart.
He said, bye. Cute.
I can't stop.
All right. Well, let's see if it will upload.
Nobody move.
Watch.